Yeah, hello everybody to today's edition of our CESI Talks series. CESI Talks is a set of interviews in the frame of our new project, MEP24, which aims at informing and sensibilizing our members, but also the citizens about the upcoming European elections 2024, and also the roles the different parliaments at regional, national level can play in the whole setting. Today, I'm very pleased to welcome Peter Seimer. Peter Seimer is member of the Regional Parliament of Baden-Württemberg, and he's Speaker for Digitalization and Taxation for the Greens. Peter, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Heeger. Pleasure to be here.
You remember we met in Constance, and we had a conference there about digitalization of public services and, let's say, the opportunities and the risks. You are the speaker, you're responsible for digitalization in Baden-Württemberg. What has changed in Germany, in particular maybe Baden-Württemberg, since the pandemic started, and what are now the urgent, pressing next steps which are needed?
Yes, that's a very interesting questions, and that's my daily work. Yeah, but first of all, compared to the other European countries, Germany is quite in an average regarding the degree of digitalization in the public sector. The possibilities, for example, for home office and digitally handed in citizen requests increased during the pandemic, and also the acceptance of digital solutions and the willingness for change increased, because that's one of maybe a special Germany issue which we don't observe in other European countries, where are mostly more willingness for digital solutions than in Germany. One could say that since the pandemic started, everyone in Germany realized that digitalization of the public sector, but also in the private sector, is not a mere to nice have, but rather a necessary. And this was a very, very important step. And Corona was very, very dangerous and very hard for all of us. But if you want to find something positive in it, and we all try to be positive humans and people, the digitalization, for digitalization, it was a kind of boost. What has changed in Germany, particularly in Baden-Württemberg? There was a big quest for our agency of digitalization, the so-called BITBW, our federal agency for digitalization in Baden-Württemberg. We already established the infrastructure for home office before the coronavirus pandemic hits Europe, and Baden-Württemberg in particular, but not in this range and area we needed for the pandemic. So for maybe 10 or 20% of each agency, you could do homework, but not for 100%. But our luck and our fortune was that we started already, and that we just had to roll it out and scale it up. On the municipal level, we have more than 1,000 municipalities in Baden-Württemberg, and we have a strong partner also for the digitalization at the municipal level. It's the so-called COM1. But nonetheless, given local autonomy, the picture of infrastructure for home office was a little bit of more diverse. But in general, there's still a way to go in organizing the digitalization of the public sector in a federal design state like Germany. So we have to deal also with our central government and the 15 other federal governance, and then I just talked about it. In every federal state, our municipals. Yes. So maybe the last, what your questions? What interventions are needed? Our central and our federal legislation has to be connected, and this is very, very tight and very in a high rate. We have to talk about it with each other and organize each other, because digitalization is not a task which one of us with one public player could do it by itself. It has to be it's a long run, and everybody has to be has to do his own part, and that's sometimes the biggest problem. And one another problem I also told in the convention in last October in Constance, maybe what it's needed in Germany and also in Baden-Württemberg, it's a little bit of more knowledge in the politics in my system, because sometimes, in my opinion, there's it's still something new. It's still just for the science and for the future. But digitalization, we can use it now. We have to use it now and roll it out, so we can use it in the next few years. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you laid the finger on several wounds. You laid the finger on the willingness. You laid the finger on the different levels, especially in Germany, the federally organized, let's say, state. Our member, the Deutsche Beamtenbund, the president always says, so also puts his fingers on the wound, saying maybe Germany is lagging not only a little bit, but quite behind. But coming back to this willingness of change, of course, we discussed that in Constance. The important thing to make people ready for change is also that these digital transitions happen in a socially fair way. And how can we ensure that? Of course, we are trade unions, so we always say we have to be ready to be involved into the design, into the implementation. We have to make sure that, for instance, there are not some kind of decoupling threats, like people getting more and more isolated, not having access to their employees and colleagues, that we need communication channels. What is for you the most important to make sure that these digital transitions happen in a socially fair way?
Yeah, that's one of the biggest part in the digitalization, because you need to get the whole the whole people, every human who lives here, because I'm pretty sure if you don't have an access to the digitalization and to the digital services in future, you can't you don't have you don't have the whole access to your social to the social life and to the social to the services from the state, and that's a very important thing. But what do we need? First of all, I have to say the aim of any technology usage is, like I just said, the critical factor. But the technology of itself, it's value neutral. So, but the important thing is the usage is human centered. This is one of the main aim we have to always to think about it, that the human centered view is don't get lost in the way. In Baden-Württemberg, we follow this principle. We aim to be sustainable. We aim to be digital and human-central in everything we do. So that's our level. I missed the word. Our claim in everything we do. So also in the digitalization. What we need, they apply to technology successfully and fair. You have to do it in an integrative way. So if a new technology affects a company, like, for example, the introduction of AI-based tools, every stakeholder in a company or in the citizenship, including the work. But maybe we stay in the example from a company. For example, the work council must be heard and must be included in every decision and every step. So that's their that's their transparency, that there is a control also from the workers, from the sorry, it's my phone. From the concerned people of itself. So that's for the acceptance also, I think, very, very important. And if a whole region is affected, again, all stakeholders must be heard. The companies, the regional governments, and the public sector, and the people, of course. In addition, equal digital literacy must be achieved as soon as possible. That's very important, so everybody can be concerned with it. And in Germany, high digital literacy is connected to higher education and higher income. So we have to put a focus to the rest of the people, because it's not we cannot have it's not our politics to say, with this big transition, this big transformation in our society, we cannot leave the people alone. So we have to take them by the hand and have to talk about, have to explain, and maybe we have to take some fears. So and show up the opportunities, and also we have to show up the necessary, because we are in still in a competition also with other not only other countries, and I don't talk about the competition with other democratic countries, but in a competition with other systems. So I talk about the autocratic states like China, or very, very neoliberal states, so that's not a question if we wanted to digitalize ourselves. So it's a necessary, and maybe sometimes we have to explain this more and show up this necessary, because I'm the speaker of the digitalization. So maybe you could imagine, maybe I like it to every digital. Yeah, it's very practical. But if I had a choice, if I can read a book, or if I want to stare 8 hours in my day in a monitor, I would prefer the paper. I would prefer some analog. But actually, that's not a question. So we have also to talk and explain about the necessary of digitalization. That's not really a choice not to do it. Yes.
Peter, thank you very much. Maybe a last question to you as a member of Parliament, regional Parliament, also for the Greens. The Greens traditionally always fighters, I would say, for more transparency, accountability. The European Parliament has just experienced the so-called Qatar Gate, where came out that a couple of MEPs, where one has to be very careful because there's still no court case here, which has our criminal proceeding, which have been brought to the end. But what are the how can we make sure that in our, let's say, liberal democracies, like especially parliaments are, let's say, more resilient, more resistant to the temptations of corruption? I mean, I've had many talks with many MEPs, meanwhile, and most of them said rightfully, I mean, you can have the strongest rules. It's also about the implementation on the one hand, and of course also about, by the end of the day, of the willingness of the persons, both the person who corrupts and the person who is corrupt, not to bend the system. What is, according to you, let's say, the most in a brief closing, the most important now when we think also maybe at the upcoming European elections?
Yes, I think that's a very, very important question. Thank you for this. And maintaining the integrity of the representative institutions. It's one of the biggest and one of the most important and challenges. It's a permanent challenge, and it also needs additional legal regulations, like more transparency, for example. I have to say, you spoke about the Qatar Gate in the European Parliament. Everybody was shocked. Everybody who wasn't involved, and me also was very shocked about it. And this is one of my. I have a own high motivation to fight against this, because I have to tell, maybe because I became a politician 2 years ago. I was a few years working as a tax fraud investigator in Baden-Württemberg. So I fought against the financial criminality. I worked with my state police in special against money laundering. So the fight against financial criminality is a high focus, is a very, very special focus from me, and still in the parliament. So we need effective rules, and we need to maintain the integrity. So but we also have sometimes, in my opinion or in my view, it's not easy, because maybe I make an example. Every crime statistics in Baden-Württemberg says objectively we get more and more safe every year. And if we make surveys, the subjectively opinion and a view is that it's getting every year more worse and more unsafe. And that's a very that's a little bit tricky. So if you make law, and if you make politics, and you say nearly in every criminal statistics you get more safe, and your people say, I'm feeling more unsafe. That's a problem. And I think we have to also learn more about media, about headlines, clickbaiting, and something like this. It's also one of the part we talked about. The second question, when we talked about what it's needed for a fair digital transition, we also have to talk about digital education, because if we in politics also talk about just talk about and we want to make more transparency, maintain the integrity, you send a little bit a message of politics in general. It's always a little bit not fair, not not correct, and the main part of the parliaments, not only in Germany and not only in Baden-Württemberg, are correct, and they only want the best for the people in their way, and they're always black sheeps, and this has to be the focus, and we have to make really effective rules against them. But when we have, what I want to say is, when we talk about this, we have to put the focus also that it's a minority and not the majority, because if we lose this focus, the honest people, the honest politicians, which are the main, the majority, also have it has it harder to fight against our corrupt colleagues. Yeah. In Baden-Württemberg, we have a transparency registry, for example, based on a transparency registry law. This registry, organizations and associations are listed, which wish to represent interests either vis-a-vis at the federal parliament or the federal government, for example. In this way, citizens and other stakeholders can track lobbying activities and exercise public control. We also, in my opinion, we could do this a little bit more effective, because also this law has this or a little bit of weakness, but that's something we have permanent and still to discuss. And if we see a weakness in a law, we have to correct that. Yes.
Peter, thanks a lot. All the best to you. We will see each other hopefully very soon either in Brussels or in Stuttgart. And yeah, take care of yourself and goodbye.
Thank you very much, Mr. Heeger, for the interview.